Welcome to European Journeys. We are continuing our series on the Walloons that changed the world. These were people who lived between the 16th and 17th centuries. They were born in what is today Belgium, or the northern part of France, and they became Protestants. They were reformed, and because of that, they had to flee the land, in particular after the Roman Catholic armies invaded the land to try to regain these lands to the Roman Catholic Church. They had to flee to lands which would adopt the Reformation, and so where they would be free to worship according to the Reformed faith. And wherever they went, they became a blessing for those lands. And in fact, today we are going to look at the life of a man who is recognized in Sweden as the father of the Swedish industrialization. Now, this is quite a remarkable title, and it's even more remarkable and sad that in the land where he was born, near Liège, he is largely unknown today. So today we are going to try to look at the place where he was born. In fact, his name, first of all, is Louis de Geer, and he was born in a small town called Grivegnée. Now, Grivegnée today is part of the Greater Liège. It's part of the City Council of Liège, but it is located a bit outside. It was located a bit outside of Liège at the time of the life of Louis de Geer. Grivegnée is along the river Ourthe, and it's on the slope of a hill. And on top of the hill, we find a hospital today. And if you enter on the parking lot there, you will find an old building which was in fact part of a castle named Château de Gaillarmont, where it was there that Louis de Geer was born. So as you can imagine, he came from a rather rich family. The de Geer family was in fact one of the richest families of the Principality of Liège. Louis de Geer was born towards the end of the 16th century, and at the time, the family had already adopted the Protestant Reformation. But in the Principality of Liège, as we've seen in our previous stage, the authorities would ferociously fight against the Reformation, try to protect their principality into the Roman Catholic Church. And so the Protestants were quite persecuted there. So much so that finally the father of Louis de Geer had to decide to flee the land. He had to leave all his belongings behind and finally found refuge in Dordrecht after traveling in a boat that was transporting tar, hidden there, all the way to the free part of the Netherlands at the time, and so to the city of Dordrecht. At the time it was called Dort. Well, Louis de Geer grew up there, and as a young adult, he went to study in the Reformed Academy of La Rochelle in France, where he studied also marketing. And when he came back, he married Adrienne Gérard, another lady from Liège who had to flee also Liège because of the Reformed faith that her family had adopted. So he married her, and he started a business in Amsterdam. Now, it was a business in metallurgy, and at the time, metallurgy was very important because there were a lot of wars in Europe. The Netherlands were engaged in wars, of course, the 80 Years' War against the Roman Catholic army of Spain. And so Louis de Geer, in fact, became a very successful businessman. But he had also decided to apply the biblical principles of giving 10% of what he earned to the poor. And the Lord blessed his business. Now, he was so much blessed in his business that he would become prominent also in the politics of his country. He was also quite a wise man, in fact, and listened to into many different topics. And his fame went way beyond the Netherlands, way beyond what was then the United Provinces. And in fact, the King of Sweden took notice of him, Gustavus Adolphus. Now, Sweden was also engaged in wars, the 30 Years' War, for example, and also other wars. And obviously Sweden needed guns. They needed artillery. But there was a problem. Sweden was not able to fabricate these guns themselves. The Kingdom of Sweden was not able to do that. But they had mines. They were able to provide the raw materials, but not to transform them into finished products. So what they had to do was to sell the raw material abroad and then buy back the guns, the finished products, not just guns, but also other products, the finished products backed from the lands where they had sold the raw material. And obviously, the finished product is always more expensive than the raw material. So the economics of Sweden was not doing very well in the beginning of the 17th century. And the King of Sweden wanted to change that. And one of the things that he needed to do is to be able to have an industry that would be able to fabricate finished products as well. And so he took notice of Louis de Geer and he called him to help the industry, to develop the industry in Sweden. Louis de Geer accepted. Louis de Geer obtained the lease of several old factories in the country and began to modernize them. Now, Louis de Geer did not that alone. He could not do that alone. He needed workers, skilled workers, in the metallurgic industry. But such workers did not exist in Sweden. So where would he find those people? Well, Liège, in fact, was a place which had a long tradition in the metallurgic industry. Even up until recent years, the metallurgic industry around Liège had been always prominent. And it was the case already back in the 16th and the 17th centuries. So Louis de Geer went there and in fact hired people. Most of them, if not all of them, were in fact Protestants. They were Reformed. So for them it was also a way to go away from a land where they were either persecuted or marginalized. And they went to Sweden, where they could then plant their own communities. So they began to live together near the factories where they were working. And they began to form their own communities, Reformed communities. Now we have to know that in Sweden, the only official church was not the Reformed Church, but the Lutheran Church. There were two different streams of the Protestant Reformation. And the Reformed Church was not seen with a good eye by the church, the Lutheran Church of Sweden. But nevertheless, because of the need, most probably that the blessing that they were bringing to Sweden, they had the freedom to organize their own communities. Louis de Geer provided for the salaries of Reformed pastors that came from the Netherlands, French-speaking people who would come, and they would be the pastors to these Walloons. And then from Monday to Friday, they were hired as teachers to the children of those Walloon workers who had come to Sweden. Now, these schools became so successful that, in fact, the Walloons, the children of the Walloons, had a higher level of education than the Swedes at the time. Education in Sweden was not yet widespread, as it became very soon in the 17th century. And so the Walloons began to gain a higher level of knowledge and of skills thanks to these church schools, in fact. So this is quite a remarkable fact about Louis de Geer, who provided for that. Now, Louis de Geer provided also good counseling, was also able to help Sweden in the war against Denmark, in fact calling even armies from the Netherlands to come and help the Kingdom of Sweden against Denmark at the time. And he succeeded, so he really became a prominent figure in the making of modern Sweden. Now, that's not all what Louis de Geer did. As I said, he was a very generous man, and it is estimated that he provided for a third of the needs of the refugees, the Reformed refugees from what is Palatinate in Germany, where there too Roman Catholic armies entered the land to try to regain it to the Roman Catholic Church. Reformation had spread out, had become quite widespread in those lands. And so these refugees had to flee to modern-day Netherlands, and Louis de Geer provided for their needs. And the estimate is, as I said, say that it's up to a third of their needs that was provided directly by Louis de Geer. He also built a hospital in Amsterdam and did many, many other things. It would take quite a long time to list them. But these are just a few points about Louis de Geer. But in particular, today, in Sweden, he is still today recognized as the father of the Swedish industrialization. But one of the secrets of Louis de Geer was his Reformed faith and his application of the Reformed faith in the practice of business, what Max Weber would call the spirit of capitalism, the Protestant work ethic and the spirit of capitalism. Well, that was exactly what Louis de Geer applied there in modern-day Netherlands and in particular in Sweden. So while he had been rejected from Belgium, he became a blessing for the modern-day Netherlands and in particular for modern-day Sweden. I'm Cedric Placentino. See you next week for another stage of European Journeys.